Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of In Depth with the Bengals. I'm Jerry Miller. And with us today is the assistant coach of the ISU women's softball program. His name is Randy Clark. And I have to admit that our face-to-face meeting via Zoom today is the first time I've met Randy. He came on board with Cristal Brown when she became head coach last year. And then, of course, their season was abruptly ended before they could play any home games in 2020 in the spring. And Randy, welcome to Idaho State. That's a rather belated statement, but it's nice to meet you.
Well, thank you. Great to meet you. And it's been an awesome experience at Idaho State. It's been a lot of fun and love the community. It's just great.
Well, let's find out about Randy Clark, who the heck he is. Where were you born?
I was born in Spokane, Washington. I won't give you the year, but I was born in Spokane, grew up there, and made that my home through college. Went to school in Ohio, but then came back to Spokane, and then lived most of my life in California, about 30 years before returning to Spokane to help Coach Brown at Whitworth University.
So what was it like growing up in Spokane? Tell us about your family and what it was like growing up there.
It was great. I worked a lot. So when I went into high school, I actually played tennis and had to make a choice to play tennis for the school or get a job. So I ended up getting a job, which was very, very worthwhile. I was working 48 hours a week when I was a junior in high school, from 3 to 11 every night, 6 days a week. And then senior in high school, I worked 40 hours a week. But Spokane was a great, kind of a small town, and a lot of school spirit back in the day in high school. And so, the football games were packed, the wrestling matches were packed. Had a really, really neat growing up. My sister, I had one sister who was 3 years older than me, and she was the brains of the siblings. And so I'd follow her in school, and people would wonder, "You're really Connie's brother?" And so that's the way it was. But I had a great growing up time for sure.
What did your parents do?
My dad was an accountant bookkeeper, and my mom worked with him for years and years. So Dad was into the employment agency called Acme Personnel. Now, those were back in the days where you stayed at one company for years. And so I think he was there for at least 20 years. And then later on in life, Mom and Dad moved to a little town called Cedarville, Ohio. It's a college town, and Dad worked as kind of an employment person for the school back there in Ohio, where my sister and brother-in-law still are to this day.
So as you got on with your life, did you ever marry, have a family?
I did. I'm not married now. We adopted 2 kids. One, Allison, is at Nike, and then the other one, Sean, is in Ohio. And he just got out of the military not too long ago, out of the Marine Corps, both adopted at birth. And most of their growing up years were in California when I was in the produce business in Bakersfield, California.
So here you are, a softball coach. Tell me how you got into that business.
It's kind of crazy, Jerry. I started with a friend of mine who was a president of a little local league in the Tri-Cities, Washington. And they needed a coach for a little team that no one wanted to coach. They were young, from a fairly poor area of town. And so I volunteered to do it. And through that, we literally took the team down to Disneyland and spent 3 days down there with this group of 12 kids and a few parents after the season was over. So I got into it a little bit in the Tri-Cities. And then when I moved to Bakersfield, I went into the league thing, got involved with a little bit of tournaments and did quite well, and then started a travel program in Bakersfield where we ended up getting 9th one year, 4th one year, and 3rd one year in the nation. So I had one of the top 3 18 and under teams in the country for a period of time, and so got heavily involved. I like to learn, so I realized I don't know much about anything, and so I was able to connect with some pretty neat people in the softball community, learned a lot, and then went into it pretty heavy and pretty hard.
Now, you've talked about getting an education in college. What was your degree?
I've got I've got a BA in business administration from the Cedarville College I was talking about before, Cedarville University now. I ended up going to get a master's of science in accounting from Kent State, and then 1996 or something like that, I got a doctorate from Pepperdine University in organizational leadership.
And yet you got into coaching, and most people associated with Idaho State may think that's all you do. It's far from all you do, because earlier you mentioned getting involved in produce. Talk about that and how that happened and what you were doing.
So I got my degree, my master's in accounting, assuming I was going to be working at a CPA firm for most of my life. I did that, passed the CPA exam, worked for a couple of years, got certified. But then the person I worked for in high school was had some challenges, and so he asked me to come and help him turn his company around, which I did for a couple of years. Ended up, kind of fast forwarding, I was asked to become a part of a carrot company down in Bakersfield, California, heavily involved in sales. And I kind of have a weird combo of accounting and marketing sales, which normally they usually kind of contradict each other. But I got heavily involved in the carrot industry down in Bakersfield, and went from that company to start a company of my own. I turned around the company, sold it, and then ended up starting a company on my own. Got the Green Giant label from Pillsbury, sold it to one of my competitors, and that's kind of the way that whole process kind of went. I was heavily involved in produce for a good period of time, and still am. And that's kind of my expertise, is kind of the ag produce side of businesses.
And yet again, here you are, assistant coach of the softball program at Idaho State University. Now tell us how you're still involved in produce and some of the other responsibilities you have.
Okay, great. I've been very blessed. So, I'm not the smartest person by any means. And so I've been fortunate. I have some talents in some areas that allow me to do some things that are pretty fun. And like I say, I've surrounded myself with really, really good people. So I left, the carrot industry and ended up getting into a fruit deal and helping turn around the company there. And then ended up moving to Deming, New Mexico, the largest chili and jalapeno company in the country. They were in some severe financial trouble, got it turned around, sold it to a Japanese firm, and thought I was going to retire. And that's when we went to Whitworth University, and I was helping Coach Brown during that period of time. Pretty quickly, I got a few phone calls, and I became a part of a public company, a coffee company, and eventually was chairman of the board up until about 2 years ago of that coffee company. I'm just getting off that board now. So I was involved with coffee, a public coffee company. I'm on the board of a zucchini noodle company right now based out of Austin, Texas. And then about 2.5 years ago was contacted by an equity firm in New York that wanted to look at this garlic company. So I did some diligence with them. They made me chairman of the board of that company, which I still am. And right now I'm serving kind of as an interim CEO until the new CEO comes on board.
Randy, this is all fascinating. As a matter of fact, as we talk, you are in Orlando, Florida, dealing with business for this garlic company. Can you tell us the name of the company?
Yes, it's called Spice World. We do a lot of fresh garlic. We'll do, 75 million pounds of garlic a year. And so we do fresh whole bulb garlic. We'll do peeled garlic. And then the minced garlic that you'll see in the jar, which people recognize as a blue cap, that's ours. So we're in, the majority of retail stores around the country, and headquartered in Orlando with a very big facility in Central California.
And the coffee company that you helped run and that you were involved with was Farmers Brothers?
Yes, it was. It's a heavy DSD company. So obviously the pandemic took its toll. Service 50,000 customers or so, a lot of retail, restaurants. So the little restaurant there in the breakfast restaurant that's so good in Pocatello, I walked in and was talking to her. They had some Farmer Brothers things in there. So we hit it off because they were buying our coffee in Pocatello, but we literally will deliver right to them.
That's awesome to find out about the other things you're involved in. So which is your career? Is it coaching or is it these other things? Which is your hobby?
I have to say I've spent a lot more money on softball than I've ever made. I often will say if Coach Brown would fire me, I'd probably make money. But softball was interesting. So when I was at the Carrot Company, it was literally a 7-day-a-week deal. It's hard to get my mind off of what was going on. Produce and ag is very fast-paced, changes every day. That's why sometimes it's not easy to find people to get involved. And so I've been able to do that. When I started way back in the softball coaching, even a travel team, I would totally forget about carrots and produce when I was coaching. And so we go to these tournaments. We play 65 games in the summer and travel all over. And I wouldn't even think about work. So it was very, very healthy, to be honest with you, for me. And so it's been a hobby. We go to the College World Series. Even now we're trying to go every year that we can. And so we're heavily involved. Coach Brown is a real student of the game. She's really progressed. It's been fun to watch that. But certainly a hobby. So my career would be considered produce and ag and being heavily involved in running companies and things like that.
So let's talk about how your relationship with Coach Brown, how did that begin?
There's a video out, it's a YouTube video called Brown Clark Softball. It'll explain it in more detail. But Cristal was a player at a high school I was helping coach. So my assistant coach asked me to help him coach his high school team. He wanted kind of my experience. And so I didn't have time, a lot of time at the beginning, but got involved and then got regularly involved. Cristal was a player there and had a tremendous amount of talent, but totally raw, had speed, had the ability to learn. And so worked with her a lot, flipped her around from right-handed to left-handed, made her into a power hitter and a slapper. She still holds records in Central California for base stealing and batting averages and things like that. So got to know her through that. She had a pretty tough home life, and that video explains that home life, living with her grandparents, and Cristal didn't have many opportunities. So at the time I was married, we brought her in to the family basically because we wanted her to be able to go to college. And so she moved in with us, just took advantage of the opportunity that was given to her, which is really kind of the cool story. It's one thing to give someone an opportunity, but it's completely different for someone to take that opportunity and run with it, which she did. And so she lived with us. She ended up going to school, graduating, has a master's degree. And the first 6 months of that whole process was hard on her because we had some rules and we had some study requirements that she wasn't necessarily used to. So it was really good. And like I say, her background was rough, and she really came through all that very, very, very well. Is just a great example to young people now, and she kind of really understands coming up when you don't really have a lot, and she's just done quite well. It's been a real blessing to see her grow and be the impact that she is on so many kids.
So when she became the coach at Whitworth College in Spokane, she turned to her mentor, apparently, and asked you to join her, and you have been coaching with her ever since.
Yes. So she helped me at a college, started a program. I taught at a small school called Masters Now, and I was teaching a little bit at the MBA program at Pepperdine. And so she helped me at Masters for a year or two while she was going to school with getting her master's. And then I happened to sell this chili company in Deming, New Mexico at the same time that she saw this opening in Spokane. And she actually said to me, "Why don't you apply for that job?" And I said, "No, I'm a 55-year-old male. You're a 30-year-old female. You apply." And she was pretty surprised. They hired her very, very quickly. And she said, "I'll do it if you help me." And it was perfect timing. And Spokane's a nice place to live also. So we went up there and kind of turned that softball program around and had a great experience for 8 or 9 years. And so, yeah, we've been together coaching for quite a while now.
And you have come with her to Pocatello and Idaho State University. Talk about that move. Talk about the challenges.
That happened very, very quickly. Pauline was obviously a huge, huge reason why Cristal took this job. It wasn't probably a month before that Pauline had made contact that Cristal was sitting out on the porch having coffee in the morning, and we had a nice place that was kind of remote and quiet, and she said, "I'll probably never leave Spokane." And 4 weeks later, she has a conversation with Pauline. We came down to Pocatello before she came down for the interview just to see if that was even a place that we would live, and love the area. And it's, beautiful open spaces and really friendly people. And when Coach Brown ended up meeting the crew and all the supporting staff and everybody, it was like a no-brainer for her. She felt like it was a great opportunity to hopefully help a program a little bit, and felt like that was something that she was supposed to do. So pretty much uprooted, looked at a house on Tuesday and moved into the house on Saturday. So it was really, really fast. Certainly kind of threw our life up in chaos for a while, but been very rewarding. Just love the area and absolutely love the kids. It's just awesome.
What do you see in this program at Idaho State? First of all, that's a challenge.
Obviously, we're not one of the big schools. We're not the Arizona or UCLA's and Washington's. So there's always going to be that challenge. The way the softball world is now, there's that upper echelon of schools that attract a lot of players, and even now attract transfer players. So one of our challenges will be to build a good, solid program and be able to keep some of the players, at Idaho State. Now, the programs at Idaho State are good. So we're fortunate that we have some really good degrees there at Idaho State. The people love the area. So I think we're going to be fairly successful at that. But then even the recruiting, again, the hardcore softball players that basically put softball first will look at the UCLAs and the Washingtons and the Oregons and the Arizonas. And so that is a bit of a challenge to be able to compete at that level. However, both of us are pretty competitive. And Coach Brown coached the #1 high school team in the nation down at Valencia. She was there. She's super competitive. As a player, she was competitive. I have a kind of a track record of some turnaround things in business and also softball. And so building a softball team is not that much different than building a team at an organization that's not softball related. So we are going after it. We've made some progress. We've got some things next year, I think, that will look good also. And it'll take a few years, but we will be quite disappointed if we're not on top of the conference year after year.
Well, that's great to hear. You've mentioned some of the challenges. So what have you found at Idaho State that you really absolutely just love?
I love, I mean, I love what we see as camaraderie amongst the school. So a lot of times you might be in an area that have multiple colleges. So Spokane, for instance, has Gonzaga. That made an impact on Whitworth, of course. At Idaho State, it is all about Idaho State. And so we get really good support. We walk into a restaurant or whatever, and people will say, "Oh, you're the new softball coach." And so I love the camaraderie there, but I also love the type of students that we're getting. And we're getting a really good student that cares about academics, and that's critically important to us because probably none of our kids will graduate and go into professional softball. And so we are strong urging them to get very, very good degrees, and Idaho State allows that. And we've been able to attract not only good talent, but very good academic kids. That is really, really exciting. It's nice to be able to say we have a good program that after 4 years, you're going to come out with a very good, valuable degree.
Well, Randy, we're looking forward to the spring and to the 30 or so games that hopefully you're going to play on the road first, and then we'll finally get to see Coach Brown's Bengals play at home, which we did not get to see this last year. Talk about Miller Ranch Stadium and how unique that is compared to what you've been experiencing throughout your career.
Yeah, so we like it. At Whitworth, we were fortunate. We had a really nice facility there. And so when we came to visit Idaho State, one of the first things I told Coach Brown, I would like to put a nice big wall in the outfield to make it a little bit more stadium. And very quickly, we realized that would have been the biggest mistake we could ever make. And so people would talk about the people that would sit on the berm and watch. And of course, you're a little skeptical because sometimes the weather's a little bit cold or whatever. But when we played in the fall last year, I was amazed that we would have people from left field all the way to right field sitting on that berm with dogs out, and the stands would be full. The support was fabulous. And so just the venue itself is really, really, really neat. And so we get a lot of compliments from that. And certainly it's a fun place to practice. You're just surrounded by beauty, and that just makes everything a lot easier and a lot better. The locker rooms are great. The staff on the field are phenomenal. I mean, can't say enough about how nice it is for those people to take care of it and never complain. Actually take pride. They take pride in what they do. You don't find that often enough. And I mean, I don't even want to walk out on that dirt after they drag it because they have it pristine. So there's a lot of really neat things going on in that athletic department, and certainly, the people we deal with in softball are just really, really good.
Randy, as a coach, what are your specialties? What are the things that Cristal has asked you to hone in on?
So I've focused a lot on hitting. Back in my early days, I wasn't allowed, the softball ASA rules didn't allow you to recruit. So you could only have players from your area. My area was Bakersfield, Fresno, Visalia. At the time I started, I had very little pitching. So we had to score runs. And so I put a batting cage at my house, and our kids would hit every night of the week. They'd come for 20 minutes and then rotate out. So I've been heavily involved with hitting. I've had some very, very good major D1 players, All-Americans, that I was able to turn around from right-handed to left-handed and get them to hit with power. And then if they had speed, also slap. So been very involved with hitting, and actually Coach Brown was a right-handed batter that we turned around left-handed, and she just had a phenomenal career in college also. So probably the hitting side is what I focus on as much as anything. And it's been a lot of fun to watch some of these kids progress in that area.
You know, it's interesting when you talk about changing athletes from batting right to going left-handed. Um, Even in the little experience I had growing up, I started out as a left-handed hitter, ended up switching to right hand, which raised my batting average, but I found that I lost power. I could hit that ball a lot harder batting left-handed, which was interesting to me and has always been something I've remembered. And I don't know if it has something to do with the body, but obviously it's something that you have tuned into.
Yeah, so a lot of the kids, one of the things we really work on hard, and fortunately I had some mentors early on that I would go talk to because I wasn't smart enough to do this on my own, but a lot of what happens as a right-handed person, your right arm has, stronger than your left. And so when you bat left-handed, you're pulling hard with that right arm, and that's where you're getting the most of the power. And so I've always taught a person to swing with power first, then slap. I can teach a kid to slap really quickly, but to hone in on that left-handed swing to get it nice and level and go through the plane and timing and all that, it takes some repetition. And I really think there's an advantage for a right-handed person to swing the bat left-handed because of the power in that right arm.
Randy, what are we going to see when the Bengals start their spring season in 2021?
Well, I'm not sure because we have some depth this year. So you're going to see, I think, a defensive team that will be as good as anything at Idaho State for some time. We have had some practices that have just been killers, and it's unbelievable what we have for defense, the way it appears so far this fall. So we should be very good defensively. We've got some major hitters. We've got Emma Bordendecker coming back, and we got Miley and Rianne Lewis. We got some hitters that are going to give us some pretty good offense also. But I think our defense is going to be great. And then we've got Miley coming back to pitch, and Emma Montoya, a freshman out of California that's got all sorts of potential. So I think we're going to be pretty well-rounded. But if I had to say what's going to be different maybe this year than even last year, I think our defense all the way around is solid with some pretty good depth in different areas. So the people that can hit the ball are going to be the ones that are going to be out in the field for sure.
All right. Well, I can't wait. Bengal fans can't wait. We had our softball season cut short. Our men's and women's basketball seasons were terminated early. And it's just been a very difficult situation, especially for college athletes. And as I said, we just can't wait. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. Here's a guy that's a CEO, chairman of the board, has been of a number of different companies, who's also involved in running our softball program. All I can say is, Randy, it's been great talking to you, and we are so glad that you're in our program.
Well, thank you, Jerry, and I can't say enough about Idaho State and the leadership, and very thankful that we're here, and have just absolutely loved it so far and plan on continuing for some time going forward.
Randy Clark, assistant softball coach at Idaho State University. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining us and going in depth.
Thank you, Jerry.